They're a part of art history and a part of the history of the Danish capital. And when a fire flared up on April 16th and consumed more than half the building they were housed in, firefighters, employees, and volunteers on the streets helped rescue more than 90% of the building's cultural objects. That's good news for these paintings and historic works. They were part of what once was Copenhagen's old stock exchange, which dated back to the 1600s, a building used by Denmark's Chamber of Commerce in more recent years. The blaze reminded people across Europe of the one that damaged the French Cathedral of Notre Dame 5 years ago. It's not known what caused the one in Copenhagen. It is known that the water used against it caused some of the streaks you see on these paintings. And as the building itself is repaired, these works can be as well, though a museum conservator says the cost hasn't been determined yet. Many Danes say they're thankful that so many works were rescued, and even in a damaged state, are now safe. I'm Carl Azuz for The World from A to Z, your non-partisan source for news and international events, and Fridays are awesome. This is it, our last show of the season, the last show of our first academic year on air, and we are so thankful to have you watching it. Next story today is about a U.S. executive order, but before we get to that, a world of knowledge.
Word of knowledge. Which U.S. president issued the most executive orders? Richard Nixon, Franklin Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Abraham Lincoln. No president has come close to the 3,721 executive orders of Franklin D. Roosevelt, who served the longest but also issued the highest average number of orders each year.
An executive order is legally binding, but it's not approved by Congress, and lawmakers can defund it if enough of them oppose it. These orders can also be overturned by a court or reversed by the current president or a future one. This week, U.S. President Joe Biden announced a new executive order concerning immigration. 2021, 2022, and 2023 all set new records for the number of people caught illegally crossing into the U.S. from Mexico. The president's new order says when this number averages more than 2,500 per day, people seeking asylum in the U.S. will be expelled and not allowed to try again for 5 years. Asylum's when those who've been displaced or persecuted in their home countries try to move somewhere else. There are exceptions to the new rule for children without their parents or asylum seekers who can prove they're in danger. The president's been under pressure to address the issue of illegal immigration, and he says the order's necessary to secure the border, though he admits it's not a long-term fix. He's blamed Republicans in Congress for not passing bipartisan legislation that would include more money for Border Patrol agents and immigration judges who could help process migrants. Republicans blame President Biden's policies for the record numbers of illegal crossings and say his new action is an election year political stunt. Other critics, including some Democrats and the American Civil Liberties Union, say the new policy is too restrictive, like one enacted by former President Donald Trump. The ACLU sued to block that one and says it'll try to block the new one as well. Some other Democrats call the order a step in the right direction and say it'll make a big difference in reducing illegal crossings. The policy took effect immediately.
It's a battle for the ages. Chains like Wendy's, Burger King, KFC, and McDonald's are fighting to best one another in value menus to convince consumers to spend their hard-earned cash. Wendy's has a $5 menu and occasionally offers breakfast deals for just $3. Burger King is following suit with the return of its $5 Your Way meal, though it's not available just yet. Chicken chain KFC is touting its Taste of KFC deals as a, quote, value menu with real value, starting at $4.99. Meanwhile, the Golden Arches CEO wrote in a spring quarterly report, as consumers are more discriminating with every dollar that they spend, we will continue to earn their visits by delivering leading, reliable, everyday value. But why the sudden push? And can it work to inspire consumers to drive through?
The American restaurant community has obviously stepped up those value offerings to meet the consumers that are tighter with their purse strings now.
The pressure for affordability comes as consumers balk at higher menu prices while pulling back spending after several years of high inflation.
Both labor costs and food costs for the industry have exponentiated over the past 4 years. So as a result of that, the baseline menu price for a lot of food and beverage items is higher.
Price promotions are a gamble. Discounts eat into profit margins, and they only work if they compel consumers to forego the competition and home-cooked meals and spend their money. In New York, I'm Lee Waldman.
On this date in world history. The Treaty of Tordesillas was made on June 7th back in 1494. It was an effort to prevent disputes over the New World by dividing its land between Spain and Portugal, which were exploring it. But the people who were already in the Americas didn't get a say, and neither did other European countries, which pretty much ignored the treaty. Another treaty dates back to June 7th. You might know that Vatican City, also called the Holy See, is an independent country, even though it's entirely located in the Italian city of Rome. The agreement that established the Vatican's independence is called the Lateran Treaty. It was signed in early 1929 and took effect on this date. And yesterday's show remembered a historic World War II battle from 1944. Today's recalls one from 2 years earlier when the outnumbered U.S. Pacific Fleet defeated Japanese forces in the Battle of Midway. This helped turn the tide against Japan. A couple months ago, we featured a story on recycling textiles, often clothes that had been thrown out, in Sweden. An artist in the West African nation of Ghana has his own unique way of recycling unused fabric scraps.
This is the work of Michael Ga, a young textile artist in Ghana. The fabric scraps he uses are from unwanted clothes. He gets them from a fashion studio called Fens Fashion Limited. Instead of throwing away its scraps, the studio lets Ga sort through them and take whatever he needs. Ga also goes to secondhand markets to pick up raw materials. So that piece of art on the wall could be made from clippings from a dress, a shirt, or a skirt from 3 different cities.
It is fabric. I source them from Cantamanto, and then this one is from a friend that sews, and then this piece is from Woodin.
Finding used materials is not only cheap and resourceful, but eco-friendly. Loads of secondhand clothing and textile waste are imported to Ghana every week. Much of it is just dumped into landfills.
I don't want them to end up in the seas, in the gutters, to choke them.
Ga hopes he can play a small part in reusing waste and repurposing it into something beautiful.
You guys are the best audience in news. We've announced 450 schools this year from several continents, but we received more than 500,000 shout-out requests. So, if you didn't hear your school mentioned, we'll be looking for you in August when we are back. Today, we start with Mrs. Callaway Burke students at Brownell Middle School. Great to see y'all at Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan. Mr. Madison's class is watching from TE Middle School. The Bulldogs are on guard in Berwyn, Pennsylvania. From Central Falls, Rhode Island, we're thankful to have Miss Jenna's students watching at Central Falls High School. From Sunnyvale, California, we see Miss McKell's classes, the Spartans, online at Sunnyvale Middle School. And from Hickson in the Canadian province of Ontario, Mrs. Bullock's class is here from Hickson Central Public School. For our What in the World segment, magnet fishing. It'll test your mettle. A couple in New York recently cast a line under a bridge in Queens, and the guy knew he was onto something when the catch of the day was a heavy one. He hauled up a small safe from the lake. There was dirty money inside, but only because it was covered with mud. Police reportedly couldn't link the loot to a specific crime, so the couple got to keep it, all $100,000. First, you set it with some lead. It sinks right down after you let it. Don't forget it. You can bet it attracts metals when you wet it. If you want to get ahead, it helps to find a safe and net it. Could be one man's trash instead. It's treasure like you never met it. You set it, you read it, and when it comes to what's magnetic, it's about real pole position and nice work if you can get it. That's a wrap on our show and our season. Once again, so happy you could make our first year on air so awesome. Can't wait to see you again on the other side of the summer. You are a blessing. You are loved. You are the best part of what we do, and you mean the world to me. I'm Carl Azuz for The World from A to Z.